And if you want something even more complex, we can do something else in the right hand. So the left hand, I was kind of rocking back and forth, right? So you can actually do a sort of a rocking thing in the right hand, and I tend to think of it in two different ways. Either I'm rocking between the pinky and the other notes, like this, or I'm rocking between the thumb and the other notes, like that. When you introduce that, either one or both or whatever, things get even more interesting. And so on. Okay, now you can totally stop there, and it sounds great. But if you're ready for something even more complex, let's introduce inversions. So let's go back to our E minor 7 shape here. And instead of playing it like this, I'm going to put it in first inversion, right here. G, B, D, E. Now I can cycle it through the rest of the chords, and now you can see how it might be easier to think in terms of moving B and D down. Because here's our first shape, our second shape is that right there. So you see, I found my B and my D, and I moved them down. Now, yes, we could look at this as like a first inversion of an E fully diminished 7 shape. We could also enharmonically call this a G fully diminished shape. That's great, and if that works better for you, then I think that's fine. However, it may be easiest for you just to think, find the B and the D and move them down a half step. At any rate, that takes us from our first shape to our second shape, and then we just move in half steps from there down. So here's our third shape, and here's our fourth shape. Now we can, go back to some of the things we were doing before, and we have a whole other, way of playing it. And so on. All right, how about bumping everything up another inversion? So here's E minor 7 root position, first inversion. Here's second inversion. Again, we cycle through, we find our B and D and move them down, and then we move everything down from there. And finally, let's bump it up once more into third inversion. That puts us starting here, and then once again we find our B and D. This is pretty neat. This time they're on the outside, and we'll move them down a half step. And then from there, everything goes down in half steps. Believe it or not, there's still more that we can do with this. Not only can you take an entire set of shapes and bump them into different inversions, but you could also move from one inversion to another while you're on a single chord shape. That would be something like we would start at the, say the E minor in root position, and then I can bump up here, and then I move to my next chord, and maybe I'll come back down an inversion. Maybe I'll come down another inversion. Now I'll move to my third shape, move everything down a half step, and maybe I'll do something like that. Then it's time to go to the next shape. I'll move everything down, and I can move that into different inversions. That lets me do things like this. And so on. By the way, I should stop here and say that this is not just for upbeat jazz. You could easily apply this to ballads as well. And so on. Finally, let me give you one more really cool thing that you can do with this. Why not arpeggiate the notes or otherwise create some sort of single line melody with the right hand? Over a ballad, it might sound something like this. Or at an upbeat tempo, we might get something like this. And that's it. You've reached the outro of this intro video. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I really appreciate it, and I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to leave me a comment below and or send me an email, james@realjazzpiano.com. Also, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, and if you want even more, check out realjazzpiano.com. Have an awesome day. We'll see you later.